I learned this like in grade school, where you take an idea and then you start branching off of it. It's like a idea web circle or whatever it may be. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. Go ahead and check in as you're coming on board. Good morning, Michelle. How are you? And I'm going to go ahead and send a quick email to remind everybody here that we're about to get started. And today's subject, I found it a very interesting one. You know, on every subject that I do, I take my own personal experiences. I also do a lot of research to find out more about like human behaviors, my own behaviors. And the more I discover, the more enlightened I become, and the more aware I am about my own personal behaviors and dysfunctions, and the way I act, the way I approach life. And it's this constant need, now it's become a need, to learn more, right? To become more. And the only way to become more is to really take that aspect of revealing things that haven't been available to you before. And that is knowledge, right? And knowledge itself is not going to help you necessarily get what you want. It's a step towards it. Not until you actually apply it will you be able to ask better questions, right? Just because you know something doesn't mean you can see the questions that will come after you actually do it. And that's why it's so important that we take that additional step, not just going out there and taking on all this information. I think we all have this desire to learn more, right? We all have this desire. And there's so much information out there for us to be able to get what we need and to learn the things that we want. But truly, that has no effect on your overall growth if you don't apply it and find out what mistakes and find out better questions because of that, right? You'll always have a ceiling of the perspective just because you haven't applied it. And, you know, as I start looking at my own journey and, you know, this whole thought process of, you know, profits, and it's something of the prime three, the P3 that we discussed. And profits is made up of two components, which is the revelation side and the application side. The revelation is to discover, to learn, right? To find something new, and then the application process is to execute on what you just learned. And that's where profits really comes from, right? Profits is just a culmination of constantly learning something and executing. And profits is the byproduct of all that. And, you know, I've been in many situations where I've had this deep desire to learn something new. And I face it every time, especially with marketing, right? And I think a lot of you are in that place right now where you want to learn more about, let's say, how to edit a video, right? You're not in that place where you can necessarily hire somebody and you want to just learn about that. And some of you are ready to like start a podcast and you know you really dearly want that, but then get overwhelmed by the process. And I've been there many times. You know, right now I am streaming live, right? Live to our workplace, and I got 3 cameras set up. And this was only available to me, right? The results was only available to me once I took the initial step of purchasing the equipment. Now, here's the thing. Here's that thing that happens oftentimes, is that after we take the initial steps of either investing or learning, there's a big gap of actually executing. And that was one of the things that I just couldn't do. I bought $25,000 at that time, a lot more now, $25,000 worth of equipment, okay? And it just sat there in my studio for months. It sat there in my studio and it was gnawing on my conscience. I was so pissed off at myself. I was so disappointed in myself because here I am investing all this money and I didn't do shit with it. It was just sitting at me. So every time I would walk in there, I would almost avoid it, right? Because all the equipment was right there in the corner and it was just like gnawing at me. And it came to a point where I kind of put like this table right in front of all the equipment so I wouldn't feel so guilty about spending all that money. But I think we all have the right intentions. We all want to learn something new, and we take the initial steps. And we've had here so many deep trainings, right? With podcasting, with setting up live videos, with Facebook marketing. But it seems so overwhelming, right? Even though we have good intentions, once we get started, like we lose that because of all that we have to learn. And one of the things that I realized, there's often a conflict. There is a conflict between two competing goals and motives. One, the goal of getting it accomplished. And the second is the goal of just taking the easy route. And oftentimes we succumb to the easy route. And this shows itself in many situations. For example, the goal of losing weight, right? And then the goal of eating what you like comes about. And that's a fine balance. But here's the thing. Once I started actually taking the initial steps of putting this together, it all started with one camera. So as opposed to trying to set up 3 cameras in my studio, I said, you know what? I am going to break this down because it's too overwhelming. How about I just focus on setting up one camera? And then from that point, I can learn how to set up multiple cameras. But before I can go there, how about I choose the right software? And before I go there, I got to make sure that I can go to YouTube and find out how others have done it, what mistakes they ran into, right? So as opposed to getting overwhelmed by the entire situation, I started breaking it down. And I'm gonna go over that here in just a second. But one of the things that I want you to be aware of is that anytime you have this goal, this target, right? There's always going to be a competing goal or target. And that is called the resistance, right? The resistance. So you become aware of that anytime that you want to do something, there's going to be an immediate resistance. And a lot of it's just conditioning on our part. A conditioning that there is no urgency. A conditioning that something else is now more important. So one of the things that I've learned is that when we have a goal in mind, or a target, as we call it here at Aids and Associates, in mind, we have to try to attack it first thing in the morning. We have more patience first thing in the morning. We have more self-control and the energy first thing in the morning. As the day wears on, it erodes this self-control. It erodes the energy. Just because we're dealing with so many outside influences, especially owning a small business. You're going to have to deal with your clients' issues, the mortgage company issues. So by the time you go to attack something new or the things that you want, let's say working out or eating healthier or applying something new to your business, a new system, a new process, you're less likely to be able to do it in the afternoon. So one of the things that I'm going to recommend to you is that whatever you want to accomplish, whether it is starting that podcast, whether it is going live on Facebook or getting that CRM set up or whatever it may be, I would try doing it first thing in the morning when you have more self-control, when you have more energy. And this gives you now a greater chance to be able to pull off whatever it is that you want to do. And that's why, we talk about the core 4 and something we've developed here, the prime 3, is to be able to accomplish these things first thing in the morning. Because as the day goes on, that energy, your patience, right, will be eroded. And the likelihood of you learning something new at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon is less likely than for you to just wake up and start learning something new and applying just a small fraction of it. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what I've done in order to apply and execute on the goals that I have at hand. Because since these cameras, I've done so much more. I'm more technology savvy, technically savvy, than I ever was in my life. And this is the same person. I am the same person that used to use that as an excuse. I don't like technology. I don't understand it. I don't know how to use these softwares. But over time, I've taken the energy by doing it in the morning and just simply applying it. And that's why and this is the direct result. The profits that I have today, the results I have today, was because I did something about it. Not only did I learn about it, but then I started executing on it. So as you start thinking about what you want to create, and some of you are ready for that podcast. Some of you are ready, right, to at least, at the minimum, start editing your own videos. What is it going to take? And I'm going to tell you this, you can try to put it off till later this afternoon, but if you make it a mandatory goal to yourself to do it when you have the most energy and are more likely to do it, odds are you will pull it off. So one of the things that I started doing is just breaking down that simple goal. And this is what I'm going to urge you guys to do, okay? If you're in the position now where you want to start that podcast, where you want to start that CRM, it's not to think that it's all going to be completed like today, right? And then there's that famous quote either by Bill Gates or someone before him that said, we underestimate, right? We overestimate what we can do in a day or in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in a year or 10 years. I mean, there's different variations of the same quote. What he's saying is we put so much pressure on ourselves to get it done today, right? And that's the reason why I couldn't even get these cameras set up after spending all that money, was because I thought I needed to figure it out all today. So if we break down this process and say, okay, today I'm simply going to unbox, and it could be something so simple, but it takes you a step further. So let's say you bought that equipment for the podcast. Let's say you bought one of these things here. Let's put it on the other camera, the Zoom, all right? The Zoom here that I have it connected to. Maybe it's just unboxing it today. And then you just simply put a check mark there, right? And then the next thing is, it's like trying to find out what the next equipment is. So you put a check mark there. It's like really breaking it down so you don't feel overwhelmed that you have to produce and edit an entire podcast today. And if you take these small steps over a period of time, by the end of next week, you could be set up in a position where you're ready to start recording your podcast. And breaking it down really gives you at least a pathway to be able to pull it off. But again, we have to be aware of that there is two competing goals. And when we overwhelm ourselves with what it's going to require, because it's above what we already know, right? It's way above of what we know. And that's the reason why we can't muster up the energy to actually go and figure it out. But if we break it down piece by piece, it doesn't seem so overwhelming. So with this, I took that same process. I said, okay, I'm just going to break this down. And before you know it, I got my first camera up. And it was just such an amazing feeling, knowing that after all these months, all I had to do was try to take care of it first thing in the morning. So for about 2 to 3 weeks, I broke it down and just learned something new about this process, about streaming live, about changing cameras, about the software and everything that it requires. And because I put that in the morning, it became possible. Now, here's the thing. There's also things we can do that also sabotage our overall growth. If there is no self-control, if there's no self-awareness first thing in the morning, things don't get better. Like I mentioned before, things get tougher. The energy that it's going to require gets tougher during the day as we start facing these challenges throughout the day. So if you're not doing the right things right from the beginning, it's not going to get better, regardless of how much you think it is. This morning, I went out to get some gas at QT. And as I was there pumping the gas, I saw droves of people just coming out, right? Construction workers, office workers, every shade of color. It didn't matter who it was, all right? I saw people coming out with these big, I don't know what they call them now, quenchers, thirst busters. I don't know what QT calls them, but they're huge drinks. And a lot of them were also having whatever food that they have, they're being warmed up at the gas station. And, my thought process is your choices don't get better throughout the day. But if there's no self-control in the morning, you will not have any by the end of the day. And that's the thing. If you think about this, we feel good in the morning, we're going above our day, but yet the most stressful time of the day is once 3 o'clock comes around. And by the time we get home, we have very little patience for our kids. I can't tell you how many times I've blown up on my kids for something so dumb, right? For something so silly. You didn't pick up the plates. I'm yelling at my kids for something so minimal. And it's because we've already eroded the energy we've had. So if we start off on a bad foot or a bad step, it's going to carry on. It's going to magnify itself through the rest of the day. With that being said, so if you have any things that can alleviate that stress, if you have the right steps in front of you where you're not carrying the guilt of not executing, that'll make you better at the end of the day. You won't be so stressed out. You won't be so impatient, and you'll have more energy now to pay close attention to whatever it is that you have to do during that time. So think about these things that it takes to really pull off whatever you want to do. And oftentimes, our progress is eroded. It's eroded by not only the heaviness of the task that we have to take care of, right, of the thought process of applying this system and that system, but also the pressures we face as small business owners. So if you want to be in power, it really comes down to what is it that you're doing when you first start. So back to the whole conversation of the Prime 3, which is revelation, learning something new. So as business owners now, we have to take care of all aspects, especially as we're starting out. We have to take care of all aspects of our business. Marketing, sales, systems, everything. We're responsible for it all. If you have a clear plan of action, you will be more likely to be able to accomplish it, to execute it, to grow your business. And you're even more likely to grow even faster if you do it first thing in the morning. So some of the things that I do. One, we talked about accessing power, mental and physical power. I want you to challenge yourself of trying to lead that pathway, to lead that life of getting up and just doing something for yourself mentally and physically. I do that through Audible books. I do that through podcasts. I do that by working out. I do that by challenging myself. I am more likely to get more energy because, again, your energy erodes throughout the day. So your job is to try to put a deposit, a bigger deposit at the beginning of the day so that your day is more effective and you're not blowing up on your family at the end of the day as your patience is being tested. So your job is to try to put the deposit in the energy, in the ability to now learn something new. You got to have more energy. But if you're just rolling out of bed, trying to accomplish something, your ability to stay on track will be nil. You won't be able to compete with somebody who has taken care of the self first and foremost. So let's think about that. If you access power, it is like making a big deposit. And throughout the day, you're like spending this deposit. You don't want to be broke. You don't want to be in a deficit by the end of the day. And that's the way we got to look at it. So what is it that you want to learn? So first, let's do this. Let me go ahead and deposit this energy. Let's deposit great thoughts in our minds. Let's deposit about the possibilities and the things that we could actually achieve. So now when it comes to learning about podcasting, now when it becomes to learning about just simply executing on Facebook Live videos, on posting, you're more likely to do that because you have a deposit. And some of us are trying to reach into that bank account with no deposits. All you're doing is withdrawing. Of course, you're not going to be able to be successful. Of course, you're not going to be able to compete with the next person. You can't. You won't be able to do it. There's nothing to withdraw. You've made no deposit. As a matter of fact, that deficit is going to blow up in your face because you're going to make irrational decisions. You're going to blow up on minimal situations where you make mountains out of molehills, right? You're going to find yourself apologizing throughout the day because you're in a weakened state. There's no way you're going to effectively compete with the next person, with the person that understands that the only way to withdraw is if you put in the deposits. There's no way. So let's think about what it is that you want to execute. And let's break this down. So how can you do this? I wrote down a few things here. And my computer died. Oh, here we go. So first and foremost, you got to set the target. I wanted to get my live videos from my cameras, from my HD cameras, up and running. So I set the target. And then there's a process called the breakdown. I knew that I couldn't pull it all off in 1 week, in 1 day. So I didn't overwhelm myself because I know I have a limited capacity that I'll be able to embark on throughout the day, right? So if I'm trying to finish it all off in the morning and it's just depleting my energy, by the time the day carries on, I'm not going to have anything left in the tank. So if I break it down and I say, I don't have to finish it all today. I'm going to give myself this entire week to learn more about the CRM or this autoresponder or this podcast, whatever it is. But I break it down to 4 simple steps. 4 simple steps that I need to take care of. I'm going to watch this YouTube video, how to connect my camera to my computer. And then I'm going to watch another YouTube video on how to connect my computer to the audio. And then I'm going to learn more about this software that I have to do. So now I have a step. And by the end of next week, I'm actually going to be ready to execute on this podcast. So it's really breaking it down to a 4-step process. You take one target and then break it down. Next thing you do, I like to do the old school method. It's just, I do this all the time. And I'm going to show you. For those of you that are watching, I learned this like in grade school, where you take an idea and then you start branching off of it. It's like a idea web circle or whatever it may be. And I do that. So with anything you want to do, think about the possibilities of what issues you're going to run into. What is it that you're going to learn? So if you take the idea, you draw a circle around it, and then you branch off the things that you have to accomplish and the things that you might run into. That's helped me out a lot. And everything that I do with my podcast, with my trainings, with my mindset masteries, this is the process that I've taken. Just like that. Done it there. And here, everything's like a little graph, and that really helps me put into perspective. Now, when I start just putting everything down, regardless of how dumb the idea may be, there's always something that comes up from it because I am in that place of discovering something new. Final item. I think this is the most important, is putting a time frame. Putting a time frame of when it's going to actually be accomplished. So if today, if you want a CRM, and you're like, I can't choose what CRM to use. There's so many companies out there. It's like, just put that as the goal today. Today, I would just pick one. What that's going to require is to break it down. I'm going to have to research and sign up for three CRMs and use my free week, whatever they offer you, to actually just choose one. And now you're one step closer to having a fully functional CRM. And that's the key to all this. So as you start thinking about profits, the revelation aspect and the application, this is not going to be available to you until you access that power. And again, listen to those podcasts, listen to those audiobooks, watch the videos that will get you closer to that place. Make the deposits, the necessary deposits, so you can prolong the energy you have throughout the day. Because you can't continue to give the worst to your family, the worst to the ones closest to you, because that energy has eroded itself. And you're doing an injustice to your business if you don't learn something every day, if you don't reveal something to yourself every day and simply execute on it. Deposits. What are you doing about it? All right, guys, we all have big things that we have to accomplish this week. So just simply ask yourself, draw a little graph here. What is it that you're going to pull off? If you've been wanting to do this podcast, how much closer will you get by the end of the week? Doesn't mean you have to execute it. Just tell me, how much closer will you get to it? If you've been planning on editing videos, how much closer are you going to get to that? I learned how to use iMovie. For those of you who have MacBooks, that's like the best software you can use. You don't need more than that. You don't. My whole team could actually run off that software and be just fine. So what I'm saying is, how long is it going to take for you to actually learn it so you can stop the excuses that I just don't know how, I'm not technology savvy, one day it'll happen. The further you push that along, there's someone that's willing to do it right now. There is always someone that is willing to do it right now. And oftentimes they have the advantage over you as time progresses. So don't sit back and wonder, how in the hell did this young kid or this person that just got into the industry, how are they able now to grow faster than you? Well, they simply started executing on the things that they learned. So what is it that you're going to pull off this week? Say it, then do it. Write it down, then execute upon it. It's all about you. And understand that as the day progresses, you're going to erode that energy. Let's make the deposits in the very beginning. All right, let's hear what we're saying here. Let's see. What are you guys getting from this conversation? Good morning, Wendy, Michelle. Good morning, Armando, Caroline, Nick, Susan, Olivia, Adrian, Patrick. Good morning. Sharon, yes, deposit before you make withdrawals. Such a simple concept, yet all of us seem to forget about it. Remember, start with the right decisions in the morning. Odds are your decision-making skills don't get better as we go out throughout the day. They just don't. We're under too much pressure, too much stress. So if you're not doing the right things in the morning, don't beat yourself up for not being able to pull it off in the afternoon. It just won't happen. And if you don't take care of the things you're supposed to in the morning, your decision-making skills don't get better. So it starts out with taking care of yourself. Don't be that person that's walking out of QT with a 44-ouncer, okay? And then expect that you're going to lose weight after you make that decision first thing in the morning. Wendy, that I have to get my shit together, pretty much, right? We just have to make a decision. We can't continue to ride on this excuse that one day. Let's put a time frame that this week it's going to happen. Let's put a time frame that today you're going to deposit towards that goal by the end of the week. It's a simple process. And before you know it, you'll learn how to do the Facebook ads. You'll have better questions on how to edit video. You'll have your 5, 6, 10 episodes of your podcast. But it begins today. Teresa, this works. I have been trying for sure and get my live video done. I like the idea to list to make other goals happen. I like the idea of a list to make other things happen. And it's real simple. So don't overwhelm yourself with all the things that you have to do. We all have big things to do. Just pick one. Break it down. And by the end of the week, you're much further along. Unboxing equipment. Choosing a CRM. Watching a video takes you one step closer. Guys, that's all I got for this Mindset Mastery. I hope that you're able to take this information and understand the key principles of what I'm trying to communicate. Make the deposits and understand that you'll have more energy and more ability to execute whatever you want when it's in the morning. So try that. Eric, abracadabra, I will create as I speak. Focus your energy on a better future. I love it. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Mindset Mastery, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye now.